Welcome everyone to another I Get It live session. My name is Timothy Harrison and I am the content manager and an Autodesk consultant for I Get It. If we have any questions along the way, you can always shoot me an email at tim@myigetit.com. So for today's session, we're going to be looking at Autodesk Fusion 360. This is an introductory course, and we're going to be looking at, throughout this session, the interface for Fusion 360. We'll look at how to create a new project and how that works with saving your data within the Fusion 360 environment. We'll also look at the basics of sketching and 3D modeling within the program. And then finally, we'll create a new drawing to document our work. And with that, let's just jump straight into Autodesk Fusion 360. So when you open up Fusion 360, this is your interface. Now to access Fusion 360, you have to have an internet connection to be able to access the program and access your data that is stored online in the cloud. Across the top of the interface, we have our standard ribbon. And here we're currently in the model workspace. If we select the down arrow here, we can see the other workspaces that are available within Autodesk Fusion 360. So we have the model environment, which we'll be mostly looking at today. We also have generative design, patch workspace, sheet metal, rendering, animation, simulation, and CAM. Now some of these are dependent upon the type of subscription you have for Autodesk Fusion 360. Depending on which one you have, you may or may not see some of these workspaces in your particular program. And then finally we have the drawing environment, and we'll look at creating a drawing at the end of our session here today. Across the top in the Quick Access toolbar, we have the data panel, and we'll select on this icon, and this opens up the data panel. From here, this gives us some information if we click the back arrow here. So we have our user, so this is your Autodesk user ID that you've logged in with your Fusion 360 program. And then these are all our projects that I've created in my session for Fusion. And this is where you would create a new project or select a project to work in. And the project is where your data is stored. All your data is stored in the cloud. You can work with some data offline, but it's only temporary, and then once you're back online, your data gets resynced with your cloud account with your Autodesk user ID. Let's go ahead and we'll create a new project. So we'll select New Project, and we'll give it a name. We'll just call this I Get It Live. We'll just click off of it to create this new project. So now we have a new project, and we'll just double click on it to access this project. Now currently there's nothing saved in here. Let's just go back and I'll look at a previous project. We'll look at this wood vise project. And we'll look at, so in here we have a folder. So we created a new folder in this particular case. And if we go inside this folder, we have data that's inside of our project folder. So we have, in here we have several different parts that were created for this wood vise design. If you look across the top here, this is your master level folder, and then any subfolders, and then down the line would show across the top of the interface here. You can also add people. So currently I'm the only person that's set for the for use in this particular project, but you could enter in an email address and add somebody to your project. They also need to have an Autodesk user ID, but once they are added to the project, then they also have access to work on these designs within your project. We're going to go back and we'll just double click on our I Get It Live project, and then we can go ahead and close this for right now. We'll come back to that a little bit later after we create a little bit of data. So let's get into this and look at how to sketch within Fusion 360. Across the top here we have a sketch panel. We have create new sketch, and then we have, if we click the down arrow, there's all kinds of tools that you can use for sketching. If you're familiar with any CAD programs, this should look pretty familiar to you because they're pretty much the same as most CAD programs. We'll go ahead and select Create Sketch, and then our origin planes and origin axes are automatically displayed. From here, you're prompted to select a work axis because there is nothing currently existing in this particular design. If you did have data already existing, you could select on a face or a plane on your existing data. we're going to go ahead and we'll select the top plane. And then on the right hand side, we get the sketch palette opens up. From here, this is where you can change options for sketch grid, snap, show profile, and also this is where you select your constraints. So as you're creating your sketch geometry, if you need to place a constraint to your geometry, this is where you would select it to then place it in your sketch. We'll select the down arrow here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a slot, and we want this to be a center point slot. And then I'm going to select the origin point of our design and then drag out a distance. Now here we can either select a point in space or we can enter in some information. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter in a value of 3 and then select tab, and notice we get the little lock icon next to the 3, meaning that our value has been locked in. We could always go back and change this value again, but currently it's locked in at 3" long. I'm going to go ahead and select in space here at 0 degrees, and then we'll drag out and we can create the rest of our the width of our slot. For this, we're going to select 3 again, and again we'll select tab to lock in that value. So we'll select again, and then that creates our slot. Now notice that the interior of our slot profile has been shaded in orange. Fusion 360 recognizes this as a closed profile, and this is something that we can then select to extrude or create some sort of feature within this particular design. I'm going to go ahead and right click, and we have the marking menu. So marking menu, like in most other Autodesk products now, is a way you can access tools without having to go up to the ribbon across the top of the display. From here, I'm going to go ahead and select press pull. And if you're not familiar with press pull, if you're familiar with other programs like AutoCAD or Inventor, you can think of this kind of like an extrude, but sometimes press pull has a little more functions than just a typical extrude would have. So we'll select press pull, and then we can select our closed profile. And now we get some glyphs on the screen that we can interact with, or we can enter in a value. We also have an extrude palette on the right hand side here. For this, we're going to select this as a symmetric extrude, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull on the arrow glyph here, and we're going to drag out a distance of 1/2 inch, and that's a 1/2 inch in one direction. So overall, it would be 1 inch. For operation, we're going to select this as a new body because we don't have anything else in this particular design, and then we'll select OK. So now we have one extrusion. If we go over here on the left hand side, we have the browser, and in the browser is where we find our origin features. We have a bodies folder, so now we have one body that we've created in this design, and then we have a sketch folder and we have one sketch. You'll notice that because the sketch was used, the visibility of the sketch was turned off. If you wanted to, you can select the light bulb and turn the visibility of the sketch back on. We'll leave it off for right now. And then across the bottom of the display, on the very bottom here, we have what they call the timeline. So we created a sketch, and now we've created an extrusion. So these are two items that are in our history timeline. This is how Fusion records history within our design. Unlike other modelers where you might have features in a tree, in Fusion 360, everything is based on a timeline. We could actually drag the slider back in time, and our sketch was turned off so you don't see it. But so we drag the timeline back, and then we only see the one sketch that we had already created. And then we can drag it forward, and we see that extrusion that we created. If you have lots and lots of features and sketches and different items within your design, you can use these play buttons to play the creation or decreation of your design as you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and we'll double click on this first sketch that we created, and let's change one of these dimensions. I'm going to change this dimension to 5. So notice that our sketch automatically updates. We'll select stop sketch, and notice that our extrusion updates. So everything, it works a little differently than a typical parametric modeler, but there are features within here that work very much like parametrics, where you can update things on a previous sketch or previous feature, and it will affect things as you go forward through your design. Let's create some additional geometry on here. We'll go ahead and we're just going to start the circle tool. We're not even going to start a sketch yet. We're just going to start the circle tool, and we're going to start the center diameter circle. Notice that now it's automatically prompting us to select a work feature or a planar face. We're going to go ahead and we'll select the top face of our existing geometry. And then we will need to place the circle, and notice that we have some glyphs that automatically show up that infer some constraints. So we'll go ahead and select it at the center of this arc, and we'll select the endpoint of the line here, and that creates our constrained circle. We'll hit stop sketch, and we'll again select press pull. If I hold the middle mouse wheel button, I can move our design around in space. If I hold shift and the middle mouse button, I can rotate in space. This is helpful while you're in the middle of a command. We'll pull out 1 inch. For this particular operation, we're going to select this as a join. And if we expand this, you can see there are other options. We could create this as a new body. We could actually create this as a whole new component. And we can then modify our existing component and body by doing either a join, a cut, or an intersection. In this case, we're going to select join, and we'll select OK. So another way that we could interface with moving our model around in space is the view cube up here in the right hand corner. The view cube has a home icon, so if we select the home icon, it will revert back to a home view. And then if we select anywhere on the view cube, we can look at different views of our particular design. This is only moving the model around in space and not changing any of its actual orientation relative to space. Now let's create another boss on the other side of this part on the underside. On the create drop-down, we'll select pattern, we'll select circular pattern, and in this case we want to select features, and then down on the timeline we can select the boss feature that we created. For axis, we'll select the Z axis, and for quantity we want a quantity of 2, and we want the type to be a full rotation. We'll select OK. So now we've revolved and created another feature on the underside of this original boss. Let's go ahead and we'll create another new sketch, and now we'll create this one on the Y-X plane. We'll create another center point circle, and again we'll select this at the origin of our part. We'll enter in a value of 3 inches, and then again we can do a press pull, symmetric, and we'll drag out a distance. Notice now that Fusion 360 infers that we want to do a cut operation. So in this case it would cut material away from our design. Under operation, we actually want this to be a join. So we'll select the join operation, and then we'll extend this out to 2.5 in each direction. We'll select OK. And now let's add some holes to this. On the create drop-down, we'll select hole, and then we'll select a face to orientate our hole. We'll select the top face of this particular boss, and then we can drag it to the center of our hole. Notice that it infers where the center of this particular circular face is. We can enter in a diameter of 1.5, and for our distance extents, we want it to go through all, and we'll select OK. If we right click, and on the marking menu we can repeat the operation again. We'll select this side, place it to the center of the arc radius, 1.5 through all, and select OK. Let's create one more through the middle of this. We'll make sure that it's actually in the center here. Another 1.5 is fine. We'll select through all and select OK. So we've created a part here. Well, let's say we want this a little bit longer. We'll go back again and see that how we can update this even further. We'll go ahead and change this now to 6 inches long. And notice that our part updates. We'll make one more modification here and we'll add a couple of fillets. We can select these edge lines. We'll select ones on the bottom here as well. When we drag this out, we can change the fillet size. We'll make this fillet a 1/2 inch. And we'll select OK. Next, we want to add a physical material to this particular part. We'll select physical material from the Modify drop-down. By default, it's steel. We'll go under metal and we'll just scroll down and we're going to find stainless steel brushed. So we can just drag and drop it onto our part. Notice that the appearance changed, as well as it now has the stainless steel brushed is in this design. Let's say we want to add a paint to this as well, or a color. We'll go to Appearance, and we can change the actual appearances differently than the overall material. We'll go under Paint, we'll go say Glossy, and let's go with this Paint Enamel Glossy Red. We can select the faces on here that we want to actually apply the appearance to, and then we can drag and drop that appearance onto those faces. We'll just add it to a couple more spots here and a couple more on the underside, as well as the back. We'll select the Escape key and we can exit out of the Appearance panel. So there's our finished design. And at this point, we can go ahead and save our design. We'll select Save from the shortcut menu. Notice that our save location is in our current project that we've already created because we double-clicked it in the data panel. If you needed to change this location, select the down arrow and you can change your project location and add a new folder if needed. We're going to call this Link and we'll select Save. So now this has been saved to our cloud account for our Autodesk user ID. I mentioned before that the Press Pull tool can do more than just extrusions. If we right click and select Press Pull, if we select on an edge, notice that the fillet command is activated. If we start it again, and let's say we want to make this boss a little bit longer than the other side, and we select this face, we can do a face offset. We can drag out a distance, select OK, and notice in the timeline at the bottom we have a face offset feature in the timeline. We can double click on that feature and make edits to it if needed. At this point, let's go ahead and create a drawing for this design. We'll go ahead and save it one more time. And then we'll select New Drawing from Design. The Create Drawing palette is opened, and we're going to create a new drawing from scratch. We can select a standard. We'll select the SME standard. Our units will be inches, because that's what we've been designing in. And we can set a sheet size. We can always change these after we've already created our sheet. We'll select OK. And now we're in the drawing environment. The drawing view palette is open, and we can place our first base view. We can change our scale, and for this we'll select 1:2. and we'll select our base view, and then we can select OK. At this point, we can go ahead and start creating additional views. On the Drawing Views panel, we'll select Projected View, we'll select our base view, or parent view, and then we'll select a top view. We can also select an isometric view while this command is still active. We'll go ahead and place this over here on the right hand side. We'll select OK to create these views, and then we can edit these views. We'll first start off with the isometric view. We'll double click on it, and on the Drawing Views panel, we're going to select Shaded, and then we're going to change the scale. Currently it's coming from the parent view. We're going to change this to 1:3 and select Close. And then if we select on it, we'll select the center point of the view, and then we can reposition our view. In the top view, we want to show the lines for our fillets. So we'll double click on it. We'll select full length for tangent edges, and notice that it automatically updates before we even close the view. So we'll select Close. And now let's go ahead and we'll add some extra geometry to this drawing. Under Geometry, we'll select Center Mark, and we can place center marks on our circles, or for our holes. And then we can select the center lines and do a bisector center line on our side view of our holes. We can add some dimensions, and under the Power Dimension tool, we can add some dimensions. Notice that all of our dimensions, regardless of what type they are, can all be placed with this tool. Let's place a dimension for this fillet. Oops. Gotta make sure we actually place the dimension. And then if we double click on it, we can add some additional information on here. So we're just going to add TYP for typical on this fillet. We'll add some additional overall dimensions. We'll add some additional information for here. And if we need to reposition a dimension, we'll select on it, select the center point of the actual dimension value, and then we can reposition that value anywhere else on that particular drawing. If we want to update any of the settings for our dimensions, down here across the bottom, we can go under Annotation Settings. In here we can change the annotation font style, the text height, the unit format. In this case we have dimension. We could also have fractional. Dimension precision, angular precision, and then we can also turn on the annotation units, the trailing zeros, or the leading zeros. To further detail this design, you could create additional views such as section views or detail views. You could add additional dimensioning such as angular dimensions or baseline dimensions. You could add additional text and leaders, symbols such as surface texture, and then you could add additional tables if you had an assembly in your design. If you need to share this drawing outside of Fusion 360, you can output this as a PDF, a DWG, or even a CSV file. We'll go ahead and save this drawing, and we'll just call this Link Drawing 1. we go back to our data panel, notice now in our iGetIt Live project file that we created earlier, we now have our link detail and we have our link drawing file. Under versioning, you'll notice that there currently is version 2 because I did an additional save after we made a change on the boss detail. If you select on the versions, you'll notice that there was the original version that I first created, and then the second version that I created when we made the update to the detail. If you needed to, you could promote a previous version back to the current version. So if you made some changes and you don't want to make those, you don't want to save those changes or keep those changes, you can promote a previous saved version to the new current version of your particular file. You can also open it at that previous state if you so desire. You can also see where this particular file is used. So this particular detail is currently used obviously in our link drawing 1 drawing that we created previous, but this is a quick, easy way to find out where a file might be used somewhere else in your projects. That's just a taste. If you'd like to learn more about Autodesk Fusion 360, we have a Autodesk Fusion 360 Basics course in our library. This is a workshop-based course. You'll download some part files and then follow along with the videos to create a new vise design. There's also some additional hands-on projects where you'll follow along with the project and create some items on your own. For more than just Fusion, check out our full Autodesk catalog on myigetit.com. With your iGetIt Live Professional subscription, you can watch previous live sessions, including this session, at any time from the iGetIt Live tab in the iGetIt interface. If you have any suggestions for a future live session, go ahead and email those to me as well at tim@myigetit.com. Maybe there's something you haven't seen in one of our courses or something that you just haven't been able to figure out, and maybe it's something that we can get into one of our future live sessions and help you out as well as others. Thank you everyone for watching today's session, and I hope to see you at another iGetIt Live session in the future.